He once made a statement to his son, Johnny Depp. He said, you know, money isn't real. You know, he was having financial problems, and I think he wanted to let his son know that, you know, don't base everything on money in life. Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is blessed on this end, and we gave God all the praise for that. And you know, Johnny Depp and Ray Liotta have been in the news for the past couple of weeks. Unfortunately for Ray Liotta, wasn't too pleasant. He passed away at the age of 67. Died in his sleep while he was on location filming a movie. Very, very sad, brilliant actor, and obviously we're all going to miss him. And boy, when I think 67, I just turned 71, you know, getting up there in years, but I feel good and, you know, very, very sad what happened with Ray. And Johnny Depp, well, worked out a little better for him. You know, the trial, it was sensational, went on for weeks and weeks and weeks, it seemed. And Johnny Depp came out on top. Jury rendered a verdict in his favor. I think he was awarded $15 million for defamation, so on and so forth. Amber Heard came out on the short end of the stick. I'm not going to comment on all of that. We saw the trial. But one thing I think we did learn, if you're going to make false allegations, you better be able to back them up or don't do it at all, because the jury was pretty smart. And they picked up on a lot of things, and they didn't appreciate what they felt was false information about, you know, one or the other. And they nailed it. And, you know, you got to be careful, you know, and a lot of things, people on the internet just make statements and so on and so forth. They don't back it up. It's not proven. And unfortunately, people believe them. You know, they do, because they don't know any better. But you can't do that in a court of law, because the jury will listen, and you better have evidence to support what you say, or they're going to reject it. And they did it big time in this case. And you know, you got to love Johnny Depp. I mean, his personality, I think he endeared himself not only to the jury, but to the rest of the world during that trial. A lot of people that I know that know him always said he was a pretty happy-go-lucky, easygoing guy. Obviously, he had some issues. We saw it at the trial. No need to get into that. Everybody heard about it. But I remember just one scene. I remember when he was being questioned by the opposition lawyer. And the lawyer said to him, "Were you drinking whiskey in the morning or something?" And Johnny Depp was kind of in a low tone, fumbling around. And he said, "Isn't every hour happy time?" And the way he said it, I mean, the jury cracked up, and he really endeared himself to everybody just with that comment. So at any rate, jury loved him, and they rendered a verdict in his favor. So because these two, you know, actors were in the news, I picked the movie Blow. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Brilliant movie, by the way. Johnny Depp is always great. Ray Liotta is always brilliant. And it was a great movie based upon a true story about a guy by the name of Jung, who back in the 70s and 80s was a big smuggler, first of marijuana and then of cocaine. And he got involved with Carlos Leder, Pablo Escobar, and he was a big smuggler back in the 70s and 80s. And, you know, it didn't work out well for him. He eventually went to jail. He came out, went back to jail, and I think he died in 2021. After serving quite a bit of time. I think he had originally a 60 or 70-year sentence. He didn't do that much. I think he did maybe 20 years. That's enough, at least on that second bit. And then he was released. But the movie was done well. And I don't know how smart a guy he was, to be honest with you. I mean, he had to do pretty good. I think at one point in time, they were bringing in $250,000 a month, which in today's day and age is probably $1.5 million. Just by comparison, during my time in the gas business, we were bringing in $8 to $10 million a week. Same time, 70s and 80s. So do the math. Who is doing better? I'd rather have gas than drugs. Today, unfortunately, you get the same amount of time, you know, under the racketeering statute. But with gas, you're not putting that stuff in kids' veins, and they're not snorting it and not hurting themselves with it. So I'd rather have gas anytime. But anyway, George Jung was doing pretty good. So they make the movie based upon that. And Johnny Depp played George Jung. And I think George grew up back in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. Somehow he comes out to California and he starts to get into the marijuana thing. He was doing it locally. Then he meets up with a friend of mine. They start transporting the stuff back to New England to some of the schools and so on and so forth. And he was making a lot of money. He gets pinched on that. He does some time. Funny scene. I'll get into a couple of scenes, but it was a funny scene when Johnny Depp or George was in front of a judge. And he made a couple of statements, and the judge gave him a $20,000 bail. He was reciting for some songs, and it was true, from what I understand. It was true. And $20,000 bail, he comes out, whatever, and he continues in the marijuana business. But then he gets busted again in a bad scene. It was his mother. He had broken his parole, and his mother, he goes to the house to see his mom and dad, and his mother was wild in this movie, and I think that's how it was in real life. She mistreated his father, played by Ray Liotta. He was an easygoing guy. He once made a statement to his son, Johnny Depp. He said, money isn't real. He was having financial problems, and I think he wanted to let his son know that, don't base everything on money in life. And they had a good relationship, and Ray Liotta played it brilliantly. Funny, in real life, Ray Liotta was about 8 years older than Johnny Depp, but yet he played his father, and they aged him, and he looked great. And his mother was really psychotic, I think, and she was never happy. Anyway, while he was on parole, while he had broken his parole, he comes back to the house. He was basically a fugitive. And he's talking to his dad. He says hello to his mom. Well, his mom calls the cops on him. And the cops come and they raid the house and they pull him out. And the father is very upset. Ray Liotta's upset. And the mom says, what do you expect me to do? It's embarrassing. When I go to the stores, people are talking about my son because they know he's a drug smuggler. She has no remorse for what she did. She says, you belong in jail. Imagine that. Come on, I would never do that to my son. Unless he was a danger to himself and a danger to the community and crazy, then I'd want him, locked away so he doesn't hurt himself or anybody else. But come on. Broke his parole for smuggling some drugs and you get him locked up. I don't know about that. I don't know how you feel. If you're going to get mad at me, some of you can say, come on, Michael, you got to be a law-abiding citizen. Go ahead. But I don't think I would do that with one of my kids. It's terrible when women embarrass men, especially in front of the kids, Shouldn't be doing that. And the guy shouldn't do it either. The father shouldn't do it either, or the husband shouldn't do it to the mom. But it was a tough scene. Just reminds me of things because we had a lot of turbulence in my household. My mom and dad, a lot of times they fought like cats and dogs, and I never liked it. And, we try not to do that in front of our kids, especially when they were younger, my wife and I. But if we can control ourselves, we should. But it was a scene that stood out for me. Anyway, so when he goes to jail the second time, he meets up with Carlos Letta. His name is Diego in the film. And Carlos Letta tells him, what are you doing with marijuana? I can show you how to make some real money. You're a smuggler, I get it, but let's do cocaine. And Carlos Letta, Diego, gets out of prison, and Johnny Depp gets out a few years later. He breaks his parole again, and he goes and meets Carlos Letta, Diego, in Colombia, in Medellin. And anyway, long story short, I'm not going to go through the whole movie, but long story short, he starts to smuggle cocaine into the country. And what he did prior to him getting involved, Pablo Escobar, you know who he is, he was smuggling drugs into the United States by mules. He was bringing them across the border, a lot like that's happening now today. And I got to diverse a minute. They were smuggling cocaine across the border. Yes, I take offense to that because my sister died of an overdose of cocaine. My brother was a drug addict, hooked on coke for many, many years, caused so much trouble through our family. It's a nightmare even to think about it. So I resent that, and I didn't like it. And today, people, I keep saying this, and it's horrible what's going on. What this administration is allowing, don't get mad. This is not about Trump. It's about what's going on now. I have spoken to Border Patrol agents, both nationally and in the state of Texas, and they will tell you what's coming over the southern border is horrific. They're not even getting 10% of the drugs. And you know what? Worse than cocaine. It's opioids and it's fentanyl. And they're immediate killers in many, many cases. And yes, I have personal experience with that. And this is one of the reasons, major reasons, why I'm so upset with this administration. They're allowing people to get killed. Absolutely. And yes, I'm saying it, it's a bold statement, but it's a fact. And if you want to speak to the people involved in this that are trying to stop this drug trafficking, talk to them. This is not about me, but yes, I do take this personal because we had a personal loss that was devastating in our family over this, and it's coming over every day, every single day. Anyway, diverse. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was cocaine. It's funny that I noticed a pattern in this film that every time Johnny Depp says everything is perfect, and he says it a few times in the film, that's when things start to go bad with him. Every single time. He says it's perfect, and then things start to go bad. In his personal life, in the business life. And let me tell you something, in the drug business, like in the mob, a lot of informants. And in the real story with George Jung, he later on became an informant. He had people that he was working with that informed on him. Carlos Leder became an informant. Everybody becomes an informant in the drug business. If not, they get killed. One way or the other. You're either going to become an informant, you're going to go to jail forever, or you're going to get killed. That's the business. Plain and simple. It's something I never got involved in. Again, I'm going to tell you that we were not the major drug dealers. Cosa Nostra Mafia, they weren't. The Colombians, yes. Mexicans, yes. We were not. Did some guys dabble in it? Yes. Were we big? No. Were the Sicilians into it? Yes. The heroin trade? Absolutely. Not 100%. But we, at least during my time in the Colombo family, we were not allowed to deal with drugs. Every time I say that, people, come on, Michael. I'm saying it again because that's the way it was. But anyway, a funny thing, Pablo Escobar's son, I've been in touch with him. I'm going to have a sit down with him at some point in time. He's now involved, or he runs the estate of Pablo Escobar. And he does some charitable things also. He's a nice kid from my conversation with him. We will be sitting down at some point in time. Obviously, we have some things in common. His father, Pablo Escobar. My dad, Sonny Franzese. Of course, I got involved in the life. He really didn't. Thank God for that. So he's got a life. And we'll be sitting down. That's going to be a very interesting conversation when it does happen. I can assure you of that. Yeah, just so you know, when they, throughout the film, they snort a lot of cocaine, and it's milk powder that they're snorting. It's not really cocaine, obviously. It's milk powder, although Johnny has done a little bit in his lifetime. Not in this movie, at least not what they said. Who knows what happens in the trailer, but not on the set. It was milk, powdered milk. And very, very interesting, the women he gets involved with, one of them a stewardess that he fell in love with. Originally, he had her smuggling the marijuana because she was allowed to bring in one suitcase as a flight attendant, and she was smuggling the marijuana from him from California and Miami to Massachusetts. And then, unfortunately, she passed away. She died young while he was doing some prison time. He came out, at least in the movie, she died young. Then he gets involved with a crazy woman. At least she played a crazy woman, Penelope Cruz, who's a great actor. He ends up marrying her and having a daughter with her, the love of his life. We'll get into that a little bit. But so he's had two great loves in his life, actually three. His daughter, which became the love of his life. And very sad as we go through the movie to see the relationship with him and his daughter and what this drug business caused him and how that relationship was torn apart as a result of his being involved in drugs and going into prison. Just a side note to all of this, something that I learned, that Carlos Leder, he was actually a neo-Nazi. He hated the United States, hated them. And he wanted to import or bring in cocaine because he wanted to disperse it throughout the country because he thought it would cause chaos and weaken America. And that's what he was trying to do. And you know what? I have a feeling the Chinese are doing the same exact thing now, because from all the information that I've gotten, all the drugs, the opioids that are coming in across the southern border are coming from China to Mexico, being processed there, and then the mules are bringing it across the border. Why is China doing this? They have a plan. They want to make America weak. And any great nation throughout history, if you study it, they've all collapsed from within. And what's happening in this country now? Do you know that we had 100,000 deaths from opioid overdose just in the last year? Ages 24 to 45 years old. Those are young people. And those opioids are coming across the southern border. That's how they're getting them. From China to Mexico into the United States. There's a weakening in this country, people. Men are not acting like men anymore in many, many instances. And I'm telling you, just like this guy, Carlos Leder, he knew that cocaine would weaken, the young people in America. And believe me, that's what was happening in the 70s and 80s. That was my era. I lived it. I never took a drug in my life. I never smoked marijuana up to this point, and I never took any drug of any kind. Why? Honestly, because my father put it in my head at an early age that drugs were no good. He got me scared of drugs. I never wanted to try it because I thought maybe I'd get hooked on it, and I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want the addiction. Unfortunately for my sister and my brother and so many other people that I know, that wasn't the case. I know so many people that have had drug problems, that have had a terrible life because of their addiction, and unfortunately some that have passed away as a result. And it's a terrible thing, and that's what's happening in this country now. And yeah, when I was watching the movie, that's what I was thinking of. So that's why I'm talking about it now, making all of you aware. We got to watch out for this. There's a weakening of the youth in America. I've been hearing some stories and reading some things about 14, 15-year-old kids that have opioids, a great degree of opioids, and they're distributing them, and they're taking them, and they're giving it to athletes. Terrible what's going on. I wish everybody would pay attention. And if this administration is allowing it, we got to hold them accountable and put a stop to it, because it's not getting better. It's getting worse. And when those immigrants come across, there are going to be a lot of mules bringing this drug across the border. It's happening. Don't let anybody tell you differently. It is absolutely happening. I heard it specifically from the Border Patrol agents that are working at the border and seeing this happen. It's horrible. I haven't talked about Ray Liotta, but want to now. He played the dad, and he was he was henpecked for sure. He was an easygoing guy. And he loved his son, no doubt about it. And he tried to see him straight. He knew something was wrong because his son was making all this money. He tried to let him understand that, it wasn't going to work out right. And, in the end of the film, when we see Johnny Depp in prison, after he got that long sentence, we see him out in the yard and he's doing his vegetables. And you can do that in prison. Carmine Persico had a garden, some guys had a garden, especially when they're doing long time. It depends what institution they're in. We see there that he wrote a letter to his dad, who he knew he would never see again. He tried to, when his father passed away, he tried to go out to the funeral. The mother denied him from going to the funeral, believe it or not. She wouldn't allow it. But anyway, he writes a letter to his dad, and we see, the scene is cutting back and forth between Ray Liotta reading the letter and Johnny Depp, who wrote the letter. And it was really a sad scene. Made me think of my dad a bit, but really a sad scene. And in the script, the dialogue was actually the exact dialogue from the letter that George Jung wrote his father. It was very touching. Really was. And it kind of, I think it would get to anybody that kind of misses their dad. My dad and I had our disagreements towards the end. Obviously, I walked away from that life. He wasn't happy about it. I was unhappy that my father didn't take responsibility for what happened in our family. Our family was destroyed. So we had some, issues between us, but we loved each other, no doubt about it. It upsets me that people online want to talk about the relationship between my father, which is really nobody's business, but some people have nothing better to do than to talk about others, even their personal lives. But I love my dad. We talked about it. Is he my adopted father, or am I his real son? And I said, I honestly don't know. My mother said I am. I grew up believing he was my adopted father. It doesn't matter. The only father I know, I love him, and he loved me. And that's it. Yeah, do we have our disagreements? Don't we all? I mean, come on, be honest. And especially when you're on the street and you're in that kind of life, yeah, stuff happens. But, love my dad and he loved me. And obviously, Johnny Depp in the movie, it showed how he loved his dad, before he passed away. Very, very sad. Another thing, Johnny Depp and his young daughter, he loved his daughter. And he was separated with his wife. She got him arrested, actually, in some crazy scene in a car. He was starting to get back to see his daughter, lost all his money, everything, lost everything. Guys turned on him. He turned on him. It was a whole mess, the usual stuff. And he makes a promise to his little daughter. She's, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years old. I'm going to take you. I'm going to pick you up, and we're going to go somewhere. She made him promise on her life that he would be there. Okay, this stimulates him to want to make some money so he can give his daughter a better life. So he goes back into the drug business after he gets out of prison. He thinks he's back with his friend, but little does he know, in a scene, they make a big score, and all of the friends that he's around are either undercover agents or informants. It's a setup, and they trap him, and boom, that's when he gets this big sentence for 60 or 70 years. And what killed him is he couldn't keep his promise to his daughter. He said he didn't care about the money. He didn't care about his freedom. He broke his promise to his daughter. And that just killed him, and it stayed with him. And I can kind of relate to that a little bit. As you probably know, I have 2 daughters from my first marriage. And I'll never forget, when I had taken the plea, I was back in New York. I was actually in custody because I had spent several months in the federal jail before I took the plea. And they were transporting me back to California, where I was going to serve my time in Terminal Island. And because of my plea agreement, I had been in jail, I got special permission in the company of the marshals, I was still in custody, to go to my house and spend a couple hours because I hadn't seen my 2 daughters and my son. And so I was able to spend a couple hours. The marshals were there. They stayed in another room. And it was very, very sad because I knew I was going to be leaving them for a long time. I had a 10-year prison sentence. And my oldest daughter, Tina, who, she was, how could I put it? She was the strong one. She's kind of independent. She didn't show a lot of affection. And when I was getting ready to leave and I was saying goodbye, she just broke down. I didn't expect it from her, but she broke down and she came into my arms and she hugged me. And man, it was a tearjerker. It was so hard. And then I left, and I hadn't seen them for a long time. And I'll never forget that. And that came to mind when I saw how upset he was that he wasn't able to keep his word to his daughter. And then we see a very touching scene in the end where he's in prison, and now his daughter, much older, 17, 18 years old, comes to visit him. And she hugs him. It's very, very pretty. And he says, "I love you so much." And they're hugging. And then they start to walk, and we see that it was a mirage. It was in his mind. She didn't really come to visit him. I heard, though, in real life that Jung's daughter did come to visit him, or they did kind of patch it up and have a relationship afterwards. At least that's what I was told. But anyway, and that's how the film ends. And very, very sad. And, look, the moral of the story, because remember, this is a true story. You're only going to meet with destruction in any kind of street life. The drug business is a horrible business. There's more snitches. There's more people getting killed. There's more people doing time than anything else. It's just a bad business. Same as on the street. The street is tough too. We don't have to go into all of that. I've told so many stories. But the poor guy, his life was destroyed. Now, some of you can say, poor guy, he was a drug dealer. Okay, he was. But his life was destroyed. He lost all his money. He lost his family. He lost his wife. He lost his freedom. He ended up with nothing in the end. And that's how it goes. You want to stay on the street. You want to get involved in criminal activity, especially if it's organized in any way. Now today, here in California, go and rob a supermarket or a Rite Aid for $950 and you're okay. We got a crazy district attorney in LA, crazy district attorney in San Francisco. Crime is rampant all over the place. As long as you're not, if you're organized crime, forget it. Then it's a whole different story. But I'm telling you, people, it doesn't pay. All you young kids out there, all the gangbangers that I've spoken to throughout the years, it doesn't pay. Straighten out your life because it's only going to end in destruction. And that's the moral of the story in this movie, and that's the moral of the story in life. That's it. You go down that path, you're finished. And look at me, I'm one of the most blessed people, to walk out of that life and have a life. And I've said this many times. If you're involved in the street life, and that goes for the drug business also, you're involved in Cosa Nostra, involved in mafia, involved in organized crime in any way, you die of old age and you die free, you've really accomplished something. So for those of you that are fooling around on the street, get out while you can. If you got to do a couple of years, do it. Get out, change your life. It's the only way to go. So that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the movie. Again, it was a good one. Sad ending, but two brilliant actors in Johnny Depp and Ray Liotta. Ray is gone, but Johnny Depp, who knows, maybe his career will be a little bit revived. We'll see him in a couple other movies. I hope so. Look, he's had some issues, but he seems like a nice guy, and he's certainly a brilliant actor. So that's it for today. How do I always leave you, people? Same way. Be safe. Be healthy. God bless all of you. And yes, I'll see you next time.